Success transcends cities. As one of the world's most respected business leaders, I know what it takes. Join me now as I sit down with fellow leaders and we share our insights into how you can be successful. My name is Jeffrey Hayzlett, and this is All Business. Welcome to the show. From the backyard to the big box, today's guest knows a little about disruption. Jay Steinfeld bootstrapped Blinds.com from an idea in his garage to an early e-commerce powerhouse, eventually selling the business to Home Depot in 2014. Jay tells the story of his rise in his new book, Lead from the Core, The 4 Principles for Profit and Prosperity. Jay, welcome to All Business with Jeffrey Hayzlett.
Jeffrey, thanks for having me.
Well, it's good to have you. You're known as the founder and CEO of Blinds.com, but you built your business story with mufflers and transmissions. Can you explain that?
Well, mufflers, but not really even mufflers, franchises. I was the vice president of Meineke Discount Mufflers when there were originally 35 shops, built it to about 800 or 900. And we were in the franchising business. I learned about how to replicate systems at Meineke. And one of those lessons was I was able to take what I built even at Blinds.com, a technology platform, and used it to move into other product categories. I was a CPA at the time. I went into accounting because I wanted to be into business, but I hated accounting. I never liked accounting. I always knew I wanted to be into business.
And what taught you in accounting that said, no way, I don't want to do that?
Well, you're counting other people's money. I want to make my own money. I don't like to just watch things. I want to participate. I want to be active. I want to build something. And in accounting, you're just watching other people build things. I really wanted to be a participant.
So how did you get from Meineke? All right, you're working in the franchise business, and then you come up with Blinds.com. How did you get started, and how big was your first mover advantage in this marketplace?
Well, the 2 questions. I got into it because at Meineke, we wanted to, since we were so successful franchising muffler shops, we thought we would franchise other types of businesses. And we looked at the window covering business. The company was sold to GKN, Guest Keenan Edifolds. And then they said, no, we don't want a franchise. We sell mufflers. We want to just stay in the muffler business. So I got fired, and we all got fired. And we decided, that muffler was great, but now let's go into the window covering business. So we went into the window covering business after I was fired, and it worked out. We had a little mom and pop shop, my wife and I was the pop. And then that was 1987. In 1993, we'd heard about something called the information superhighway.
And the internet, right?
I don't know what that is. I don't know what email is, no broadband, no Amazon, no Google. But went online in 1993, really just as an experiment. Had no idea what the internet was going to be. I had no idea what I was going to be. It was just a marketing experiment to see if I could look progressive to my customers, that I had the latest technology. We didn't sell anything online. And then the next year, 1994, Amazon comes out and we say, you can sell stuff online? Let's sell blinds. And everybody, of course, said to me, that is a ridiculous idea. People can't see it. They can't touch it. They've got to measure it themselves. They've got to install it themselves. And I said, what is the downside risk? So for $3,000, I set up a site to make buying blinds and shades a no-brainer. We called it No Brainer Blinds, the world's most popular and trusted online source for blinds, because we were the only ones.
Only source, right? The only source. So that makes you the category leader without question.
Right. As far as being a market leader, it was good for me because I knew nothing. But it was a way for me to experiment early when there wasn't a lot of money going into the business, and certainly not a lot of money going into the window covering business, because the addressable market was so small. Nobody thought there was a market. So that gave me an advantage. But there were a lot of people who came in after me that surpassed me, and I bought them. And we grew and we grew And we actually did become by far the world's most popular and trusted online source for Blinds.com is by far number 1 in the world.
It's still,
especially with Home Depot.
Yeah, well, that was a big coup right there. Congratulations to be able to see that. First of all, to make a transition is not an easy thing to do, to leave one to go into the other and even survive the business itself, then to make the transition to online, and then, of course, selling out to a big box store. All of those things don't normally go well for everybody. So you beat the odds all the way across. But I'm still perplexed. How did you decide blinds? Was that your wife's idea? Was it really your idea? Window coverings? I mean, it's not something I would be sitting around going, yeah, window coverings. That's what we should do. What made you decide on that?
Well, let me get something very clear. I have no passion for blinds. I know blinds inside and out, but it wasn't like I decided blinds. I love blinds. I love window coverings. Right. I want to beautify the world. I want to provide privacy, security, insulation, all those things. It was because at Meineke, that was just happened to be one of the categories that we looked at for franchising. We just decided we'll do it. My wife started it. And then after that, since I was fired and I needed something to do and I'd always wanted to be in business, I said, I'm a CPA. I'm perfectly suited to sell window coverings. And that's what we did.
Now, one of the things you were saying a few minutes ago, Jay, you mentioned that a lot of people say, oh, don't do this, don't do that, don't do this. I mean, how many times did you hear that as you went through this progression of starting your own business and then into the .com and then into the big box before you left?
I heard it my whole life. I would say, I'm online selling blinds. And the first thing somebody would do is they'd look at me like, wait a minute, those things right there on the window, like blinds? And then as I would grow it, they'd say, wait a minute, do you have employees? Do you have an office? I didn't get any respect. Finally, when I sold the company to Home Depot, they started thinking, well, maybe he actually had a business.
He's got something. Maybe he's going to make this thing.
Seems like it might have worked out okay.
That's kind of like the actor that goes to New York and the family doesn't pay any attention, but all of a sudden he wins an Oscar or an Emmy or a Grammy, and then everybody's starting to pay her, or even maybe a Tony. Let me ask you a question because I thought was very unique. You also were a pioneer in digital content, marketing of sorts, creating your own do-it-yourself videos when YouTube barely existed. Right. How did you come about doing that? What made you think of doing that?
First, I don't think anything that I ever did was brilliant. It was just logic. If you want to show somebody how to install a blind, create a video. It's so much easier. There was nothing, it was just logic. So what I did is I hired somebody for, I think, $500. We created 3 12-second videos of me installing the blind in my bathroom. And the videographer was the voiceover and he edited it and we put it online. We said, look, you take it out of the box, put in the brackets, slip it into the bracket. It's a no-brainer blinds and shades. That was it. That was the whole video. You can see them at jsteinfeld.com. I still found 2 of them. They're hilarious. I look at them. I've got hair, so they're pretty old.
So, and for those who are just listening, he might be a little hair challenged. So there we go with that. So since you grew this company from the ground up, how did you build a winning culture? How did you go about building the team?
Well, when I started, I had no idea what culture meant. Core values meant nothing to me. I thought they were just some squishy ideals that you put on a plaque, hang on the wall, and never think of again. But the year after I went full-time online, my wife, Naomi, had been married 25 years. She died of breast cancer. I had to be introspective and think about what makes me tick. And long story short, I came up with some thoughts as to what propels me, what is important to me, existential thoughts that people think of all the time. I felt like I needed to do it. How am I going to raise my kids? How do I be optimistic ever again? And came up with 4. Turned out only one of them was true. But over time, it was important to me to think about it. And the things that we believe, the 4 E's, about experimenting, evolving, expressing yourself, and enjoying the ride, all 4 of those are what I do. I wake up and that's what I do. And once I realized that, I embedded it into the culture, and everybody there knows that their job is just to get better and to become better than they ever believed possible. The purpose of blinds.com was to help people become better than they ever believed possible. That's what I did. That's what everybody did. And if everybody is getting better, and if everybody is helping everyone else get better, you have excellence that is just happening automatically. It's like autonomous excellence. And that made it easy to lead because everybody was improving, not just themselves, but the processes, the customer experiences, the service providers, all of our stakeholders, our investors. Our job was to help everybody get better, and the community, of course. So that's what we did. It was that culture that allowed us, this tiny little group of people with virtually no money, to do things that Home Depot and Amazon could never do. They never did. And that's why ultimately Home Depot bought us.
And I'm sorry to hear about your wife, Naomi. Do you think you would have found those principles, those values, if it hadn't been for that incident in your life? Do you think you would have been as introspective? I mean, sometimes, a lot of these times when we have something big occur in our life, maybe it's even our birth of our grandchildren, or losing a loved one, or, maybe even losing our jobs. Do you think that's what was a catalyst to help you maybe introspective a little bit?
Well, it was certainly the catalyst. The question as to whether I would have ever been enlightened and have been able to do what I did is a question that I'll never be able to answer. I don't think I would have. If I have to be really honest, I don't think I would have been able to do that. But I was forced into an inherently motivating situation that I needed to. I had to do that. So would I have done it? Would I have read a book and said core values are important? Well, I'd already read that, but I hadn't done anything. I don't think I would have, to be honest. It's a difficult question because now I'm thinking, wow, the worst thing that happened to me in my life, my wife dies.
Yeah.
And that's how I was successful. That's hard to reconcile.
It certainly is. We have a lot of people in our Hero Club and the C-Suite Network, and their businesses are based on values. And we find that those values drive everything that they do. They have employees who are more engaged. They have customers who are happier. They have, they gross more money. They net more money. They have vendors who want to do more business with them. Now that you see those values that you've got right there in the book, Lead from the Core, do you see those values now being like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I didn't have them before? Or maybe they were there and you knew they were there, but now that you have them, it's like night and day?
Well, they were there, but I wasn't conscious of them being there. It took introspection and really understanding and looking deeply as to what was there, what was to be revealed. But once it was revealed, once we understood what really mattered, not what we aspired to be, but what we were, the business took off. And we said, we can become so much better than what we've been told we can be. And we did. We were able to do things that people said were impossible. Sell blinds online, build technology that is now integrated into all the Home Depot stores, 2,200 stores, that's embedded into an enterprise $140 billion company. That's hard to do. We did it. Yeah. And that feels really good. Very
That's
gratifying.
Amazing. And I having been in a Fortune 50, Fortune 100 company, as an officer of that company, I know exactly what you're talking about and how difficult that is to do, and to bring a culture into another culture and win with it. I want to ask you, Jay, since you grew this company from the ground up, how did building a winning culture play into that?
We couldn't have done it without that culture. We couldn't have built technology unless we all believed that we could become better than we were the day before. It was about the evolution every day. Success for us was becoming better every day. That's how we define success. If we could get better, if we could help somebody else get better, if we could improve a process, a system, a customer's life, we were successful. And as a result, we were all every day, multiple times during the day, successful. It wasn't about selling the business or achieving 100 or even $1 billion of revenue. And once you had that type of attitude, although there's a lot of accountability because everybody knew they had to get better. It wasn't, we'd like you to get better. It was, you have to get better, because how are we going to evolve unless we improve? How are we going to beat Amazon? How are we going to beat Lowe's and Home Depot? We had to become much, much better. And it was that culture, the 4 E's of evolving, experimenting, expressing ourselves, and enjoying it, and giving people a voice, giving people a true voice where they felt safe to speak up. Because how can you evolve unless you take some chances and you experiment? How can you experiment the right things unless you ask people for input, data? People weren't afraid of disagreeing with me, disagreeing with anybody, because we wanted to get to the truth. We didn't just want to feel good. We wanted to be good.
I love the last E, enjoying, because you do have to enjoy the ride. Otherwise, why are you doing it? It's got to be a little fun, which I think is important. Let me ask you, as you made the transition into Office Depot, you had one culture, not Office Depot, Home Depot.
Right.
I used to deal a lot with Office Depot, so that always comes to my head when I think about big box companies. But when you had one culture in blinds.com, and then, of course, Home Depot had their own culture, how did that meld? Did it meld? Did you have to make some changes? What were those changes like?
One of the great things about Home Depot is they knew that the reason that we were kicking their butt is because of our culture. And they didn't want to change that. Although, as you know, big companies just can't help themselves to do things that have unintended consequences, especially when it comes to culture. So they told me, Jay, if we do anything that's going to screw up that culture, please speak up. Of course, I expressed myself, no problem. So I had no problem with that. And what we did was we realized, so first we had the foundation that Home Depot wanted us to keep our separate culture. But we also realized that we had two different types of culture. We were customer intimate, and Home Depot, while they have an intimacy with customers, primarily it was organizational efficiency, operational efficiency. So it was like a love language. Gary Chapman, I don't know if you know his 5 love languages.
Oh, yeah.
Well, we basically accepted each other's love language and just said, you know what? You're going to be operationally efficient. We're going to be customer intimate. Let's just not mess around with the other, because look, we're not going to change Home Depot, and they didn't change us. We coexisted beautifully. And by the way, we became much better operationally efficient because of what we learned at Home Depot. And I think maybe we had a little influence over Home Depot as well.
Let me ask you another question. You stayed there for 7 years in the leadership team. That's almost unheard of as well. Usually after an acquisition, CEO might stick around for a year, maybe 2, but I don't think I've ever counted on one hand they've stayed around for 7 years or even longer than that.
Well, there was a good reason for that. I didn't have to stay. I had no compelling reason, no technical reason to stay. I stayed because I wanted to. I stayed because I was excited about the vision of taking our platform, what we called Autobahn, and extending it to other product categories. That's something we always wanted to do, whether it be custom tables and chairs, irrigation systems, whatever. And with Home Depot, finally, we could do that. So I didn't want to leave until that vision had been achieved. So it took us a while to get there, but we did it. And once we were now doing countertops and sheds and storm doors and decks, it was, okay, it's time to leave. I've got my successor. I know that the core values are embedded into the company and everybody knows what that is. Oh, and I've written a book just to make sure that whoever is new will be able to see what the history was, what the core values are, why they didn't just come willy-nilly out of some other book, that they're true to us, so that those core values would continue forever. So it was time to go. I'd been there 30 years. I mean, come on.
Yeah, well, I was going to ask you about 30 years about that, because in the book, you call yourself a serial entrepreneur, but you were at blinds.com for almost 30 years. Yes. I mean, that doesn't make sense. Is that because you did all these other products is the way you looked at that?
It wasn't about that. It's because when you evolve daily, you are different each day, and your business is different each day. So I felt like I was leading a different business all the time because it got more complex, it got larger, there was more supply chain, everything just got different. So my role was different, the requirements, my skills needed to change because the business was changing. So yes, I am not just a creative person. I like to build something too. And when you build something and it's evolving and it's not stagnant, I looked at it as a new business. And that's why I call it a serial entrepreneur.
That's awesome. Hey, in less than a minute, because we only got a minute left, I want to ask you this last question, because in the book you say you aren't retired, you're rewired.
Right.
Can you explain that?
Yes. If you have those core values of evolving and experimenting and expressing yourself and enjoying the ride, well, you're going to continue to do that. So I started teaching at the Rice Business School, graduate school. I got on 5 boards to help them. Wrote the book. I've got my 7 grandchildren, which I call my 7 startups. So no, I'm very busy. I am not retired. I am not going to be stagnant. I'm going to keep growing. I'm going to keep evolving. I'm going to see what I can do. I want to see, what can I do before I die? What am I capable of? I want to see.
Fantastic. Well, Jay, I think we're going to hear a lot from you, and I'm glad to see you're rewired and not retired. You need great minds and great entrepreneurs just like you. Of course, folks, we've been talking with Jay Steinfeld, who bootstrapped Blinds.com from an idea in his garage to an e-commerce powerhouse, eventually selling out to Home Depot. Don't forget, he talks all about the story of his rise in his new book, Lead from the Core, The 4 Principles for Profit and Prosperity. Don't forget to rush out and get it. Thanks so much for being on All Business with Jeffrey Hayzlett right here on C-Suite Radio and C-Suite TV. Thanks, Jay.
Thank you.
Hey, at the end of every show, I like to talk a little bit about what I learned from the show. It's about values. Those businesses that have values drive more business, do more business, and have a lot more fun doing it. Don't forget that last E he talked about, enjoying it. And sometimes as business leaders, we forget to enjoy what we reap. And sometimes we have to go through some adversity or even some downturns and some very bad happenings in our lives to find the real purpose for our meaning. And I'm glad Jay found that through the death of his own wife, Naomi, and being able to lead a company, not only to success as a .com company, but success in being sold to a much bigger company and staying there for another 7 years. A story you don't hear often. And you heard it right here on All Business with Jeffrey Hayzlett, right here on C-Suite Radio and C-Suite TV.
Welcome to Bestseller TV. I'm Taryn Winterbrill. We're here with Jamie Crosby. She's the author of The Power of Two, Exponential Sales Leadership. Great to have you with us.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
So first off, the book arrived in my mailbox. I love it. It's so compact. It's travel size. You could, take it with you on the go. I travel on the subway, so this fits right in my pocket or in my purse. So great job on that. It's very user-friendly.
That was the idea, a flight, that someone could read it on a flight home.
So Jamie, in addition to the size of the book, which as I just mentioned, I adore, The Power of Two, the 2 is an exponent in reference to the exponential sales leadership, which is very clever. Do people pick up on that?
I think they do. Some people maybe not as well as you did, but yes, the whole idea
I love exponents.
Yes, there you go. So there you have it. But yes, the idea is that exponential power of having your sales leader really engage with the sales team.
So what exactly does the power of 2 refer to?
So it refers to the sales leader with the salesperson, engaged at all levels of the sales process. So there's the power of 2 people in it.
Okay. Has it been your experience that that's not what exists?
It has. So prior to starting my own company, Proactivate, 13 years ago, I was VP of Sales at Career Builder and had a team of 80 to 100 salespeople across the country.
Wow.
And naturally, we helped a lot of sales organizations as well, and that's what we focus on within my company today. But naturally, there's an issue in the market with sales management, not really leading people, but more managing things, doing the reports, the data, the analytics, which is helpful to provide data so they can go engage with their team and help them.
Sure.
But
the metrics.
Yes, right. Exactly. To help them to see where to influence their performance. But there really is an issue with sales leaders being somewhat removed and not being in the trenches with their teams.
So at the core, Jamie, what is then the difference, would you say, between a manager and a leader?
At the core, I would say it's influence versus authority. It's the sales leader being amongst the team, showing them how it's done, having a replicatable sales process that they can model and help them win business.
Right. What would you say is the biggest challenge then associated with that process? Is it that not all managers can be leaders?
Well, that's certainly a problem, and you find often within sales organizations that it's assumed that a great salesperson can transform to a great leader, which is not the case.
Right.
It's not always the same skill set at all. And so it's not an automatic assumption that should be made, although some really great salespeople truly want to lead and influence people and are good leaders. That's not an automatic assumption.
Would you say, though, in that role, a sales manager has to be a leader in the world we live in? Most companies, in the past, maybe you had two different positions, wearing those two different hats, but now it really has to be in one person?
I think if it's a true sales leader, yes, you have to be that person that we're talking about.
Okay.
Where you are not only, you have to create the sales culture from the top, right? A lot of sales leaders kind of sit back and talk about the problems amongst the team, but it really starts with us as sales leaders. And it's creating that culture of excellence, and it's modeling it. So it's having a replicatable sales process, modeling that for your team, going out there with them and showing them how it's done. And it makes a huge difference. And so then you're influencing their success far beyond what they could have done on their own. So maximizing their full potential.
So is that the reader of the book? When you wrote the book, because this is your first book, right?
It is, yes.
So this is targeted for whom? The person who's already in a sales managing position they're looking to sort of expand their skill set into that role of leader.
Yes, and it's for, either someone who's expanding their skill set or a sales leader today who maybe wants to transform their culture to more sales leadership oriented, right? Because a lot of times it really does start at the very top, and there are some cultures that believe that everyone's in sales and they are engaged with their sales organization. You see the CEO out there on sales calls.
Right.
And then there are sales leaders in certain cultures who are inside the office, analyzing reports, tracking numbers. And again, those metrics are important to be used as tools, but not as weapons. And when they're used as tools, it helps give the sales leader data of which to go influence and help and impact.
So how did you come up with this methodology that you discuss in the book? Was it a lot of trial and error? Obviously, you said this is your background, learning on the job. So this is your experience kind of put on paper?
Yes, so my co-author, Jay Blakey, he was one of my first few clients at Proactivate 13 years ago. So we helped his sales organization find great sales leaders and sales talent across the country. He was Senior VP of Sales at Concentra. So he came to me a few years ago and said, why don't we write a book together? Because he managed a huge sales organization.
Right.
I did at Career Builder, and then at Proactivate, we helped sales organizations achieve their revenue goals by finding great talent. And so he said, why don't we combine our experience and what we believe about sales leadership? Because he really believed the same philosophy.
Amazing.
And put a book together.
So do people come to you at your firm, Proactivate? People come to you, are you a recruitment firm then? You're helping them find sales leaders?
And that's kind of how we help a sales organization implement this process, right? We're not a traditional recruiting firm, no, but we are specialized in sales talent acquisition, sales leadership, and things that support revenue generation. So we help them by finding great sales talent, sales leaders for their team. And also, I'm a public speaker and speak on sales leadership as well as peak performance mindset. So helping organizations to implement this within their companies is something that we can do both from a talent perspective and from a development perspective for their sales leadership.
Excellent. When you talk about this development perspective, are some of the sort of the methodology in the book, can this be applied to the whole sales team to become the sales leader, or is this more the person who's already in the the management leadership role?
I think it's both, and here's why. I think that it starts with the sales leader, but in terms of the sales team, it's not necessarily so they can become the sales leader eventually, although that would definitely add value for them, but it's so they can know the culture of their organization is one in which they have a leader who's out there with them in the field, making deals happen, or on the phone, however their sales process is, but they truly have a team member who is changing their success because they're in it with them. And there's a difference.
Right.
There's a definite difference.
No, there absolutely is. And it's just shocking to me that today's day and age that you could have a sales leader who's really not in the trenches with their team.
Yeah.
But I assume that still happens. They kind of delegate the responsibility and then they're in charge of the numbers.
Right, and they're asking you, have you hit your quota? But, there's a true leader understands the why for their sales team. Why are they really doing it? More than just hitting quota, right?
Yes.
But they care about their people. They have an empathy and they lead with love and grace. It's different, right? So when your sales team feels like you care about them personally and you understand their bigger reason for being there, which is so far beyond hitting quota, there's so many more life reasons for an individual person. And when that sales team member feels that from their sales leader, it's not only impacts revenue and productivity, but retention. And, the number one reason people leave their jobs is their boss and trusting in that leader. So when you have that bond and they're in the field with them, it's so different than just bombarding them with reporting and numbers.
For sure. I mean, you want a boss who's going to make an investment in TLC. I mean, all that goes together. It's all part of the process. That's a part of, I would say, a manager selling themselves to their employees.
Exactly.
I mean,
it should be a partnership.
Exactly. I just wanted to go through a couple of the things because there's some unique concepts. We have a lot of sales books on the show, but leadership is a particular niche. You talk about something, here go the exponents again, ESM squared, the Engaged Sales Management Squared Method. It's a mouthful, but that caught my eye. What does that mean exactly?
So it's really what we've been talking about in terms of the Engaged Sales Management method, right? And it's just the methodology that the sales leaders engage at a whole different level. That they are, the salesperson may be generating the leads, getting the appointments, but the sales leader is with them on appointments. And really that power of two, when it comes back to the exponent, it's the idea that for the client, they are getting two trusted advisors.
Right.
And it changes it to a much more consultative sales process. And the sales leader is providing more expertise within the sales process. So at all levels, that ESM2 is just that sales leader who's truly engaged in the entirety of the sales process.
Right. I mean, and I like how it's trifold because it benefits the client, the staff, and the sales organization. So tell us a little bit about the benefits in each sort of capacity.
Absolutely. So for the salesperson themselves, the staff, I would say a true leader is helping someone become what they couldn't do on their own. So you're not motivating someone, so to speak, because you have to have that grit within you.
Right.
But if someone could perform here on their own, a true leader is helping you achieve even greater results and changes the trajectory of your success beyond what you could do on your own, because you're showing someone and believing in them, and people rise to the occasion.
Right.
For the organization, it is absolutely changing, the overall revenue objectives, the retention. People are happier and they feel that bond with their boss, and studies show that happy salespeople sell 38% more. So it changes.
It's interesting that's 38%. Obviously, it's based on metrics. But,
right. So, and then for the client, it just is a whole nother level of expertise that's provided. You're getting two.
Right.
People, two are better than one, even in business, and you're getting just that consultative level of service, and I feel like it shows that you have, you can look at this team as trusted advisors versus just the salesperson trying to get a deal.
And what do you say to the person who's in a managerial role, but they're not extroverts? They're great at driving sales, but this whole idea of engaging, in the ESM squared method, it's not their wheelhouse. I mean, what do you discuss in the book to sort of, get past that?
Well, here's the thing. I don't think you have to be an extrovert truly to be good at this.
Okay.
And that is a natural inclination for us to think that. But
Sure.
really great salespeople don't seem like sales-y people, right? They seem consultative, like they have empathy and want to help someone with a problem. They really want to make an impact in someone's business,
right.
or for them personally. And so it's funny, over the course of my career, I've met several people over time, even personally, not just professionally, who say, well, oh gosh, I wouldn't be good at sales, or I'm not salesy, I'm not an extrovert.
People say that a lot.
Yes.
Sales, because it has this connotation
It does. But really great salespeople are not like that.
They're not, right. You don't even realize they're selling you something.
No, you feel like you're talking to someone about an issue or challenge you have that really cares and wants to make an impact to make it better.
Right.
And salespeople aren't selling you something you don't need. They're consulting with you and helping you solve a problem. So if you're not an extrovert, it doesn't make a difference truly, because extrovert or introvert, all people want to help someone else. Mm-hmm. And
it's a one-on-one, it's an intimate sort of relationship.
Yes.
I did want to touch upon, you mentioned with your firm, you are in the recruitment field, specializing in sales leadership. I'm always curious what your recommendation is in terms of hiring people with industry experience or without when it comes to sales. If you've never done it before, obviously it's a feather in your cap if you have, but what do you say to the manager who is considering hiring someone with no background? Is that something you'd encourage or not so much?
Well, it's interesting. So there is such a dichotomy on that topic, and I talk with CEOs and VPs of sales all the time, and some really want industry experience and some don't care. If you were to ask my bent toward it personally, and of course we honor whatever the company wants, because we guarantee them ideal candidates that match their profile. But for me personally, I believe that sales it factor, that grit, that commitment to excellence, I'm going to win no matter what attitude, is first and foremost. And so if you have that and don't have industry experience, when you engage in this sales methodology in the book, you have a sales leader there who can train and develop on the industry experience.
Right.
But what's most important is that grit and that character and determination. Yes, and 80% of sales success is based on mindset. 20% is skill set. So those are all the it factors, and that's something we teach at our company, Peak Performance Mindset, because it makes an impact.
Right, but it's true. It said if you have that grit and that drive, and you see that in other disciplines, that can be translated into a sales capacity, just moving jobs, but it's at the end of the day, it's the same foundation.
Exactly. That's most important.
But that's most important. So when you help companies attract the best talent, what are you looking for? I mean, is this something that, like you said, is it just seeing that grit in a person's resume? I mean, what is your process?
I'll tell you. So we have three major components of our process. We have a skill set component that is 20% of sales success. We need to understand their sales process, their sales methodology, their formula for success, and they need to understand that. So we know if it's replicatable and they can win for that client.
Right.
But another big component of our qualification process is based on mindset. Because like I said, 80% of sales success is about that perseverance, that motivation, that optimism, and that drive.
The ambition.
And so, yes, and most organizations don't know how to interview on that. So we have a major component focused on that. And then finally, we do simulation evaluation. So if it's sales, then we're going to be, simulating scenarios such as getting in with the right type of decision maker and how they get that meeting, or overcoming objections in the close, or things like that. Now, for sales leaders, we're going to do scenarios on how they engage with their teams. But for any role, whether it's sales or sales leadership, we are taking them through simulations to see them in action.
I like role plays.
Yep.
That's great. I'm picturing like a virtual reality capacity. I'm picturing you guys with
I love that. That's great.
Like putting something on your.
Yeah, we'll add that in now.
Right. You did spark my interest though. You said evaluating mindset. So how do you do that? You said because most organizations don't know how to do that.
Well, they don't, and they spend a lot of questions asking, talking about industry experience and sales formulas and things like that.
Right.
But we have to find out how they're made up. So we use behavioral-based interviewing, and we use questions. I mean, we actually, for each of our clients, will customize the qualification process based on their ideal candidate profile. But we ask questions around optimism and perseverance and drive and motivation, and really find out so much more. They no longer feel like they're talking about their sales background, right?
Yeah.
But for your life, what drives you?
That's great.
And so, or tell me about a time you had to show empathy in a situation and how you did that and how someone received it, or just real life scenarios where you can dig into those characteristics we're talking about that are mindset focused.
So important because, metrics are important. And tell me about your most successful sales to date.
Of course, yeah.
All that stuff. But
you need both.
You need both, right? It's a combination. I always like to know, especially Jamie, with your line of work, you've been doing this a very long time, and this book shows that certainly. What do you know now that you wish you would have known then? Or are there things in the book, and I know you have a co-author, but are there things that it was as if, wow, remember when we were doing that? We want to help people improve upon that. Or
yes, I really remember my first sales leadership job in my 20s. And I worked in traditional staffing firms, which is why now I've created something that is unique to that.
Right.
Because I saw a gap in the market. But I had a team, and I did not understand sales leadership. I was just given a team. I was young, and I thought everyone would work as hard as I did. Right. And I thought they would be as committed. And I did train and develop, but I didn't have that same attitude.
Yeah.
I thought, okay, you need to do what I would do every day, and how many have you done, and why haven't you done this yet? And it wasn't leading with empathy. It wasn't leading with grace. It wasn't really being there with them. Now, when I transformed over time, I learned that. I learned what I didn't know, and that I couldn't just expect this stuff to happen and ask people to check the box, but I had to go out and influence it. And I thought so much differently about it in the future. I thought of my team as a garden, and how I could
make it grow and nourish it, right?
Help pull out the weeds, but help nourish it and help them grow to maximize their potential.
Right.
So that is the impetus for the book. I mean, my passion, whether it's in Proactivate or Peak Performance Mindset speaking, is about helping people maximize their full potential, and that's what a sales leader should do.
Yeah, no, I mean, the passion comes through in the book, but it's so true. You talk about your first sales job, and you just expect people to be on your page and to sort of do what you do. But like you said, you can get there, but there are ways to do that, and that's what this book contains. So it's really important information, and really just user-friendly. Like I said, it's really easy to read.
Thank you.
And I think very beneficial no matter what sort of sales leadership role you're in. So congratulations on your first book.
Thank you.
And to your co-author as well.
Thank you.
Thanks
I
for being
appreciate
here.
it. Absolutely.
And if you'd like more information on the book, just check out our website at c-suitebookclub.com, c-suitebookclub.com. I'm Taryn Winter-Brill. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time right here on Bestseller TV.
Welcome to C-Suite TV Insights. I'm Greg Greenberg. The music industry has gone through a tremendous upheaval, and that predates the COVID pandemic. Here to talk about why artists need guidance more than ever is Crystal Gans, owner and founder of Mind Our Music. Welcome, Crystal.
Thanks, Greg.
Well, it's great to have you here. And first of all, what is the state of the music industry today?
Well, obviously, as you can imagine, it's been heavily impacted. No artists and bands are out touring. The crew, there's extenuating, circumstances and consequences behind all of that. But at the same time, I would say I've never seen as much creativity and ability to generate revenue through live streams. And, it's an industry that's had to try to figure it out. And I'm here to help them figure it out.
So what advice are you giving young artists trying to break through?
I will tell you, number one is mindset. Now more than ever, you really have to have that positive mindset. You have to, what you focus on expands, and looking for that positive outlook and that hope that we'll get through to the other side. Connection with your fans, direct messaging fans, engaging with them on social media, thanking them for listening, And then number 3, quality content. Especially the longer the pandemic goes, we realize the video production gets better, right? The music videos, lyric videos, live streams, that visual component of music is bigger than it's ever been, arguably. YouTube was the number 1 consumption of where people find music. So I would say quality content and video as well.
And you have a radio background, but you jumped into the music management business last January, right before the pandemic hit. Why did you want to be a music manager?
Lifelong dream. So finally took the jump on something that I wanted to do from a kid. I was a classically trained pianist and I never wanted to be the performer. I always wanted to be behind the scenes, helping somebody else get on the big stage. So really, I decided to chase the dream and help artists get to that place.
And why do artists specifically need managers nowadays? You know, there's a lot of do-it-yourself ways to promote your act, and I know you know a lot of these. So what are you doing for the artists that they can't do for themselves?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. There's a lot of do-it-yourself ways to promote that. Honestly, there's so much so that it's really overwhelming. I could show you a list 5 pages long of all the websites and social media outlets and performance rights organizations and publishing admin, you name it, that it's just a lot of artists get frozen. I'll give you one really quick example of navigating the royalties and legalities. I managed an artist that was part of a large band, a major act, signed on a label. You would think everything was buttoned up and that he didn't know any better because he didn't have his representation for himself. So really having somebody work with him to find money that he was owed from 4 years ago, that's a really important asset. You really need to have that team behind you to help you get everything that you deserve.
So like that artist, every artist is unique. What makes Mind Our Music unique? Is it your background in music as well as your background in radio?
I would say so. I think it's that passion for music, the integrity, and the artist-driven approach. So it really is Mind Our Music, and the hour is us with the artist.
All right, so where do you see Mind Our Music headed after the pandemic's over and into the future?
The biggest thing I think would be the giving back. In the next 5 years, I hope to have a 501c3 arm to the business that keeps music in schools. That was such a big part of my growing up, and music is such a part of all of our lives and part of healing. And I hope to keep music in schools and give back.
All right, well, that's fantastic. Thanks for coming on and talking about it. And thank you for watching C-Suite TV Insights. I'm Greg Greenberg.